Okay, we are live. So before I start the full focus group, I want to thank everybody for assisting our focus group today. As you know, your core reached out to everybody when it came to trying to conduct this focus group. And originally, we were supposed to have 2 focus groups, but we were gracious enough to have everybody available on Tuesday. And I reached out to those that are available on Monday, asking if it was okay to switch a different day, which is today. And I had to thank you for that because we wouldn't be here today because of that. Originally, we had only 2 participants for each days, but you all were gracious enough to offer your time. So thank you so much. But to move forward, I'm going to talk about what VSAcademy is. So, like asked earlier, there's already a platform for what VSAcademy is, and I'll link it on the side again because Matthew just joined us. But this is the old website that I'm linking on the side. But the purpose of VSAcademy is an online resource hub that serves to educate the constituents of UNASA. So this has been already a past project, but our job is to relaunch it because there isn't a platform for VSA out there that helps educate people, educate like people of VSA about videos or through videos, articles, podcasts, and other diverse mediums. So our job is to release that. But in order for us to move forward with releasing a platform like this, we needed to conduct research, which is why we had the questionnaires be released to the public. And through the questionnaires, we designed it or created it so it reached 5 branches of what VSAcademy reaches. And you could see on the doc that I linked already on the side. Oh yeah, Matthew's already on here. But the 5 branches that we will cover today are civic engagement. Oh my God, I can't remember them off the top of my head. Hugh, can you back me up on it? Civic engagement, personal development, professional development,
organizational development, and personal development.
Personal development. So based on the questionnaire, we reached those branches and everybody answered them. However, of course, we asked them in a broad sense because we wanted to get more of an understanding of why people answered like that. So by hosting this focus group, it's going to help us further our research. But as individuals that understand the community, which is you all, we want to understand the common traits behind why people answered the certain ways they did and why things come to be. So with that said, we'll start off with the warm-up question, which is an icebreaker. And we could do it popcorn style, but it's a pretty simple one. And also another thing about the focus group is this is really supposed to be a casual focus group, so don't be nervous when it comes to answering questions. There's no right or wrong answer. We're all here to support each other. So it's just going to be like a group discussion about what the questions are going to be about. So don't be afraid to jump in and just go with the flow. And if it comes to the point where the questions I'm going on for too long, Hugh and I will come in and we'll redirect it. But no worries, everybody. So how about we start with Donna. Donna, you can start off the warm-up introduction. So name, region, your VSA, like basically what school you go to. And in one sentence, what do you love most about VSA?
Okay. So my name's Donna. I am from Western Canada. I am a part of the Vietnamese, like the VSA at the University of Alberta. This one's hard. I think overall, I just love, I guess like what a lot of other people also love, just the people there. I just love like connecting with people who have similar passions and similar roots to me and who I feel like I connect to. Yeah. Do I have popcorn or do it?
Go ahead and popcorn.
I choose Ashley.
Hi, everyone. I am Ashley, and I'm part of New England IVSA, and I go to school at the University of Massachusetts in Lowell. In one sentence, I love the most about VSA the sense of family and belonging, and also like how everyone strives to become better and help each other in that process, if that makes sense. And I will popcorn to Matthew.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Matthew. I'm from the NorCal UVSA region, and I am in VSA at the University of California, Davis. So what I love about VSA the most is just the opportunity to make new friends, and then meet people with various backgrounds. So like building a network, building bonds. I love everything about just the opportunity to just meet new people in general. Okay, so I'll popcorn to Van.
Hello, fellow NorCal representative, and hello to all of you. I haven't gotten to meet you yet then. Hello, my name is Van, like the car, the shoe, or Van if you pronounce it in Vietnamese. I am from NorCal. I am a student at UC Berkeley. I'm also a member of Cal Vietnamese Student Association. And there's no short answer to all the things that I do love about VSA. I think one of the most important things, one of the things that stands out the most is the fact that so many of us, whether or not we identify with the Vietnamese identity, is how we interact with this identity that others hold as well. I think all of us have our own experiences and interpretations of what that looks like and what that is. And so getting to learn from so many other people about how they engage with that aspect, whether or not it's an identity that they claim for themselves, is something that I think is incredibly special and very unique. Okay, that's my answer. Popcorn to Him. Him? How do you pronounce your name?
Kim.
Him, okay.
So yeah, my name's Kim and I'm from Eastern Canada. I'm on the UVSA board there. I'm also part of, what was it? I forgot my VSA, like University of Toronto, Mississauga VSA. It's kind of long, so just write UTM if that's easier for you. And I guess what I love about VSA is, yeah, obviously we make connections, but what I like is being able to make people smile, whether that's, telling a joke or, hanging out or actually working on something like volunteering or creating an event or just giving back to the community. And I'll popcorn it to Hugh.
Hello, I am Hill. Region, all right. I guess it used to be Northwest, but now I'm repping Southern California, SoCal. School, it used to be Oregon, University of Oregon, but now I just work. And then, is that everyone? Yeah, that's everyone except Carl. Go ahead, Carl.
Yeah. So hi everybody, I'm Carl, and I'm from the Northwest region. I think one sentence that kind of solidifies everything for me is the one thing I love about VSA is it's my second family away from home, and it shows a sense of belonging for me. And then yeah, that's just one sentence for me, but I'll move on so we don't kill too much time with that question. But thank you so much for all your responses. But to move on to our next question, kind of goes along with it, but when you look up to a role model, what qualities or attributes do you look into? And has that role model influenced who you strive to be? Anybody could feel free to answer the question whenever you're ready. And it doesn't have to be a popcorn style. Like I said, it's just an open discussion about this type of question. So I'll leave it to you all.
So I guess this is gonna sound really silly, but yesterday I saw a video on YouTube and it was at an elephant sanctuary in Thailand. And it was of this lady and she was singing a lullaby for an elephant, a baby elephant, to fall asleep. And then she was just like patting it and stuff to sleep. It took like 3 minutes of just singing to it. And I thought like that lady radiated such love and compassion for something that she obviously didn't need to be good to. Like anyone can be good to their boss or, when they need something from someone, but she didn't need to do anything for that elephant. So I thought like, I think we should all try to be like that, a little like that. Is loving of others.
Going off a little bit of that answer, that made me think about empathy and or sympathy. and or trying to understand where others are coming from. I think a lot of times I think that's so hard to do because we're so, I guess in our just kind of train us to be individualistic, to think for ourselves and to do things the way we want to do it, but that doesn't bring into the conversation the communities in which we come from, the families that have affected us, and the intergenerational changes as well that have affected us to be who we are today. And so when we get out of that mindset of thinking about just us and trying to see where others are coming from, I think that's something that is incredibly difficult to do, but is probably one of the most important things that we do, so that we have at the end of the day, we have something that connects all of us, and that's like an understanding that we're all living and trying to thrive and trying to survive, but doing that together.
I guess I'll answer or I'll add on. So, what I look for in a role model, it's usually it's like what qualities about them do they have that I like that I want to implement into myself. Like, what kind of person do I want to be? So, with that said, um, one of the qualities that I look for is ambition, like the drive, like the passion or the motivation to succeed at what they put their heart out into. Just seeing that drive and determination is more inspiring to me, and it helps me like throughout my life. At times when like you feel like I guess giving up, and it helps teach me how like to push myself. So that's why I look for someone to be very ambitious and have the drive, and looking from them, I hope to be able to like have that sort of drive in me.
I think you all touched on really good points because all of your answers connect with one another, especially Van's answer with empathy, because I think once you start with empathy, you can find love and compassion for what your role model wants to do. And with ambition, you definitely find what drives you to do what you want to do. So I think everything is answered wonderfully. But to move on to the next question, based on your knowledge of the UNASA members, because I'm assuming everybody here has heard of UNASA, and if you haven't been to UNASA, plan to go to one. But what do you think the top professions or prospective fields are of work in the VSA community? So you can go ahead and shout out what you think those professions are. And feel free to discuss why do you think it's like that.
Engineering. Maybe business too. Management.
I feel like agree anything within like the science or health science majors. The we need to say why too, or is that just optional?
That's just optional.
Okay. The reason why I think, not to be like stereotypical, I think a lot of us are raised in like families that want us to like succeed and live very successful lives. So I feel like part of it comes from our parents, like I guess not only some pushing us towards like a field of study that they think will make us become successful. So I feel like that's part of the reason why, if that makes sense.
By top, do you also mean most common? Or is that what you mean, most common?
Yeah.
Okay, then I'd also mention nail salons, because that's a space where for a lot of our parents, for example, coming over here and having a refugee or an immigrant background, that's a field that they can get into without much experience, and with the limited time that they would have to go to school or to learn another language, then that's one of the most accessible to them, unfortunately.
I think like when I went to UNAFSA, I was really surprised by how much marketing, business professions are out there, especially since like we're so used to the traditional lawyers, business, and whatever. And I think like maybe part of that is because we are kind of starting to explore ourselves, and because we're like here, we have that opportunity to do so. So like that could kind of show more of like Western implementation, but I don't know.
Yeah, I think you all make really good points. I'm going to go ahead and show you what, based off the questionnaires, what people answered to. And I believe this is all in order, but you all can look for yourselves right here, the top professions. And based off the results of the survey, why do you think all of these, like, why do you think we're missing a couple of top professions here? Like, of course, there's education, correct? Like, why are we missing these other professions?
Mm, I think a lot of people are pushed into it from a young age. So like, even if you can say we have a choice, if a lot of people they've been conditioned since they're 5 to study science, and they're probably gonna study science, right? Some families obviously aren't that way, but I find that's how it works for a lot of people. Or if you have international students, I find even their families are very pragmatic. Like if you are traveling to another country to study, you better study something that will help you. So business or something like that. I think that mentality translates to even just families here where they're like, you know, like I think it was Matthew said. Like Matthew said, it was about trying to succeed and doing what's best for you, so that if that includes a STEM field, so you know, engineering, math, or science, then that's what they feel is best. And also a lot of when people try to get into arts, like when Vietnamese or just immigrant children, it's really hard for some people to find the value in the arts because it's not as tangible as you can solve a lot of these things. But if you know this one theory, a social science theory, it's really hard to apply.
So earlier, Donna said that at UNASA, she said there is like a good number amount of like business and marketing, but at the same time, the result shows that it is mostly medicine and kind of pharmacy. Why do you think there is, I guess, an imbalance of what people are pursuing and then what we're seeing? Do you think there is a shift because new routes are kind of opening up, or what's your thought behind that?
I think there is a bit of a shift because as we become more integrated or we exist longer in Western society, more of the Western values or just pathways are open to us, right? Like in the recent Star Wars movie, one of the characters was a Vietnamese woman, which is amazing. Like that's something you wouldn't think of 30 years ago. So even little things like that helps a lot. Or on YouTube, you see a lot of Asian Americans, not just in the media, but like mostly on YouTube, those serve as role models. So even if we like over time, I think things can change.
I really like that answer because that makes me think about for the professions that aren't listed there. I think a lot of times there just aren't people who look like us who are doing those professions, and so slowly, as more and more people who look like us can begin to serve as models for us to follow or give examples. Already for a lot of us, we're first generation college student or second generation born in the United States, and now we're I think for many of us, it's a very unique time and generation because so many of our parents do have the immigrant refugee narrative. So now that we're getting a shift as more and more of us are entering these professions and serving as role models for those who follow, or even our younger siblings and cousins who don't have that role model yet. So that's super true. And then, like you mentioned, the arts and media, we don't see very much value in it. And then going back to a lot of our traditions where community and family and even our neighbors are the sources of our strength while we're away from home or uprooted from where we have come from, then things like medicine and dental hygiene, being a student, being in healthcare, that gives us a mean to more directly and very obviously, explicitly take care of our families. All the time, my parents say that, it's super nice to have a doctor in the family, because if any of us need something, then we have someone who we can rely on. And up to this point, there's been no one in the family who is hard to get to that point. So that's why we're like pushing you towards this, and we're just really lucky that you also enjoy it and not just are being pushed into it.
Adding on, I'm curious to see what the list will look like generations later, as we become more like exposed to this Western influence. Like, will we see more like a diversity with us becoming more like open to valuing like other majors besides like the sciences, or are we still gonna see? Are we gonna see like a minor shift, or are we gonna see like more of a major shift where we see other like there's non-science majors be part of that list?
I guess that just brings into question as to like, how are we going to raise our children, and will we instill the same values that our parents instilled, or expectations, you know? And I think that will determine the shift of where our future will lie in terms of Vietnamese Americans, or, you know.
I think like going off on like the whole idea of finding the value behind things, I think like finding validation for your parents and what they have gone through is definitely like a huge factor. I remember going to the Northwest VSA conference, and one of the speakers, he was like really successful, but he says that because he stays home and like he's on his computer all day, his mom doesn't see that concrete value, because she's just like, oh, my son's working, but I still don't really know what he's doing. So I think like that whole idea of like the parenting role and like being able to find that pride in what your child is doing definitely affects us too.
Okay, I think that was really answered perfectly from everybody. Our intention with that question was to ask you what you thought of it first and develop more into it. So thank you so much, Matthew, for asking where that shift is going to be in the future generations, because I think that's a huge critical question, and I hope a platform like VSAcademy can, help gather information in that regards for that. But when you go to UNASA's and such like that in the future, hopefully we do see a shift, because many of us are first gen or second gen children in America. So hopefully we do see a shift. But thank you so much for answering those questions. But to move on to the next question, Hugh, do you want to ask that? Oh, your mic.
Thank you. So one of the ways that UNASA wants to kind of bring you this information is to find out what is the most common way or what is the most effective way that people absorb information. So, I mean, we already have the results on what most people are, how most people absorb the most effective information. So I was just curious about what are yours? Like, if you're asking for directions, what is the best way for you to absorb it? Is it writing it down? Is it the person orally telling you what to do? Or do you need them to draw you a map or show you a map?
I think it all depends on like I'm gonna like use it for academic purposes. So it all depends on what I'm trying to learn. Let's say if it's a class that revolves around this memorizing stuff, then it's just simply writing stuff down, memorizing stuff that's more applied. Whereas like mathematical classes, or let's say organic chemistry, where you have to not only memorize material but like understand it fully. That just requires like writing it down, going over it, and making sure I'm okay. I understand each step as I go. So it's like not rushing into it too, where I need to learn step 1, 2, 3, 4, like, but I can't learn step 2 until I like fully understand step 1. So for me, that learning method's like just going step by step, making sure I master each step along the way, but at the same time being patient too with myself so that I don't rush too much into it where like I get to step 5 and I forget how to do the previous steps. So that's for me, like learning for me based on if it's more like classes that require an understanding or a mastering of the topics or materials.
So I guess I'll speak. My camera is weird, but you can still hear me, I hope. I myself am a auditory learner, but I saw you already mentioned that you can orally provide directions. But I think it's important to emphasize that whatever directions you give, so whether oral or written or on a map, that they be precise. Because like if you don't if you give a too broad overview, then people won't know what you're actually like trying to get at. And I think like the precision also helps that like whatever you're trying to convey to the audience, they should be able to convey the same thing to another person effectively.
And then speaking of conveying to another person, then thinking about how everyone interprets information a little bit differently and making sure that at the end of the day, any main message that you needed to get across in the first place is not lost in translation as we all filter through our very different own or through our different lens when it comes to learning things.
Okay, so thank you so much for answering all those questions. I think the number one takeaway from that question that I understood was perspective, because a lot of people learn and absorb information in different ways. So that really helps us understand how we're going to move forward with all the questions. But let's move on to the next question. But since we just talked about learning styles and learning methods, I guess the next question ties in a little bit to that. But how do you decide what your trusted sources of news and information about current world events or worldwide events are?
Well, I think no one should be relying on one certain source to have any piece of information, whether it be for school or world events or just even just cooking, right? It's important to consider all perspectives. So watching Fox and CNN and all every single other news outlet. I know it's tedious, but if you want to be well informed, you have to follow every outlet. And also with that is taking things with a grain of salt. So if you see something on the internet or an article or on Reddit, right, you can't just take it at face value. You really have to consider like, is there an agenda here? Did they check their facts? And you have to check the facts too. Like you have to be informed.
And another thing you could add on to the question is how do you determine which source is trusted? And I think Kim made a really good point when it comes to that. So feel free to answer to that as well if it helps out.
Well, I guess one way you can just determine how a source can be trusted is like if you're reading an article or something that author has done their research and has cited sources. They're not like just quoting things or saying things out of their mind and not backing it up. And also like not believing what someone posts on Facebook or something. So having outside sources within an article to back up what is being said.
And then thinking about the author, if the author is someone who has actually experienced it or has heard it from a third party, whoever, then I would be more cautious about that as well. And then with the sources, then seeing what gets cited the most and where the original source is from, and if it's been filtered through whatever lens because of the agenda, like y'all mentioned earlier.
And also if the author decides to cite sources that have different opinions, not just one view, then you know that they've really thought about what they're trying to write about and looking at all the different perspectives on the topic itself.
I think at the end of the day, it's really a judgment call because even though there are some authors that are really credible, it doesn't mean that they're always right. I think we have to be open to the fact that people make mistakes. So sometimes we might come across like a scenario in which they say something that ends up not being true or being mistaken. So yeah, that's what I think at the end of the day. It's like it's your choice. So everyone has their own like belief of what's right and wrong. We had to make it based on like we had to just make the basically the best educated guess based on all the sources given to us. But at the same time, just be open to the fact that sometimes the most reliable sources may not always be the correct source.
Okay, well, thank you so much for all answering that question. I think we could do that question here real quickly. But how do you best absorb that information when you consume news, entertainment, and media? I think here, if you could help me emphasize with that, but yeah, it's just the question.
Okay, so the purpose of that question is the purpose of that question is to find out what is the best way to kind of give you information when VSA Academy wants to give you information, whether it be through newsletter, videos, or is it visuals, or is it just graphics? So we're just curious, what is your best way of kind of absorbing that type of media or entertainment, not just academic?
I say for me personally, it depends on the content because I think all of us can relate in terms of just like general information. We tend to absorb information that either relates to us or that catches our interest. Let's say, for example, just like a song, we just tend to like absorb the lyrics and just memorize the lyrics eventually, just listening to it more and more. So I'd say having the like information that's presented to us, hopefully it's one that relates to us or somehow it catches our interest and it appeals to us in a way and that we want to absorb that information and like remember it and consume it.
I think frequency is another thing. Like if you see it time and time again, I know that because we're like exposed to so much information, it's so hard for us to internalize it all. So like when you see something, you might be like, oh yeah, that's interesting, but like kind of scroll past it and forget all about it. So I think frequency is one thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if I have 2 seconds to scroll it over, then if in the first 2 seconds, then and you get a very general idea of why it's important, or either to you or to someone else, or who it's impacting and why it's impacting them to the extent that it is, then that's something that will, one, capture my attention, and two, I think that also helps me understand where folks are coming from when they're presenting this information. So any way in which that, or whatever way it is to the person who is providing that information, that it seems to get those like 2 seconds. So maybe it's like an image of a statistic that is whopping and insane, and then there's a sentence that explains like, this is the number of whatever, or like, this is the number of people that are being impacted by this. And like one sentence and one picture with like something that stands out would be super helpful.
Yeah, I think you all make a good point. I think Facebook is something that everybody has been getting used to nowadays because they've been focused on publishing a lot of media. So it's basically a whole resource hub of, you see visuals, videos, and posts and whatnot. But you all make really good points with frequency and how it grabs people's attention. But we're going to move on to the next question, which is question 7. So we asked the question in the questionnaire, and you might have already seen it, but the question was, are you registered to vote? And 81.9% they answered yes. 14.2% said they aren't registered to vote. And the rest you see in orange on that pie chart is nothing, so they didn't really affiliate with that question. But based on the results of the data, why do you think the data is like that?
When I think of policy and for us making a say or having a say in it, oftentimes I think about my family, which prefers to be indifferent or not take a stand. I think a lot of things they're also still trying to understand but haven't completely grasped the meaning of it. For those who are registered to vote, I know I am, because I think it's personally empowering to be able to have a say and know that my vote has made a difference, and whether that's one vote or whether it's winning by one vote or winning by a lot of votes, then knowing that my vote has been taken into account for is something that I think is new, because trying to claim an identity in a world or in a society that I don't believe has been built or designed for minorities to succeed at this point is something that I want to try to change, whether that's like individually or on a much larger level. And I think for a lot of my family, then they haven't understood how powerful their votes can be and what it means for them to not just assimilate, but also a certain opinion, but also knowing and recognizing that there aren't resources, or there aren't enough resources that are being provided so that they understand what they're voting for and how they can make an opinion on that when they're not exposed to information that's helpful or relevant or explains why it's important to them.
So I think that there, on the perspective for people who say no, those who say no, I think it's, some people have the mentality where they don't think one measly vote can cause a difference. So I feel like that's why some people would just put no, just because they're like, oh, what's the point of me voting? I'm just one person. So I think that's where some of it comes from, and the other part of it is probably from those who turn a blind eye to it, because they don't think that it affects them that much, or as much as they think it does, or they just don't want to worry about it. Because for me, growing up as a kid, my parents would tell me to like not watch the news because it always made me scared. So I think some people, if they look more into it, it will cause them to worry a lot and like become frightened about what the future holds for us. So I feel like some people might just not want to be involved with it and just hope that everything works out. You know, it's like look away from the news and just like at the end of the day, let's just hope that people are able to like sort things out for the better.
I think that like the whole idea of a vote being insignificant is like definitely one reason that turns people away from voting. I think like on the flip side, a vote is very powerful, and I feel like there's a lot of weight behind that. So sometimes I feel like when it's my turn to vote, I have to tell myself, oh, now I have to like start catching up on current media. I need to do research into all of these like political figures. So I feel like maybe one reason why people may turn away from voting is because they feel like they're not making that informed decision, or they're not willing to put that energy into forming like a fully to like gain that full understanding. And like from the people I know who do go into politics, they do tell me that it doesn't really get easier, it gets even messier. So maybe it's just like that whole, like Matthew was saying, turning that blind eye so you don't have to worry about it.
I do think part of it is, like you guys said, the turning a blind eye thing is about a distrust in the whole electoral process, or you know how like after the most recent presidential election, there's a lot of like, oh, we need to recount, or oh, the system is broken. I think that like a lot of people truly believe that. So yeah, like the apathy, the indifference part of it is you're just deciding between the lesser of two evils rather than like two different viable options. And like I do want to say that, like, to comment that I do think UNAPSA is doing a pretty good job with the trying to get out the civic engagement, because even though like 14% of the responders said no, 81 is a really good number. Like even in Canada, our voter turnout was like 68, and that's across all ages. But it was like a huge spike in voter turnout since the last time, and that was largely due to social media presence and people trying to inform each other. And there's a big spike in the youth vote. So you know, if we just keep doing that, of trying to motivate other youths to vote, or you know, other VSA members, that's a step in the right direction. Even though 14 does seem like a lot.
No, I think you do make a good point, because UNASA actually has a civic engagement committee, and I know that they've been working hard to get UNASA more civically engaged. So you can always look forward to that. But just to end off that question, I think you all answered it really well, and it kind of goes back to how we talked about where our generation is shifting when it comes to role models, or what prospective fields or jobs could be, because it kind of shows back to the question of, will there be a shift for our generation? So I think that's really wonderfully answered for everybody. But to go on to the next question, and also I know that we're running short on time, but if you all have something after this, feel free to leave the call, and don't worry about it. But to move on to the next question, our next question is a little bit on the easier side now, but what is your first UNASA or VSA event, and what did you enjoy about it?
I guess I'll answer this before I have to go. I have a meeting at 11. But my first UNAPSA event was UNAPSA 13 in Boston. And before that, I really had no idea what UNAPSA was. And it opened my eyes to how large and vast our community is, in the number of connections you can make. I don't know where that was going to go, but it really opened my eyes to yeah. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not just me in Massachusetts doing my VSA thing, but everyone else there, even though I've never met them before, but hey, they're all the way from California and they're doing something similar to me. And I can connect to that and instantly have that connection.
I think mine was UNASA 12. That's where I met Carl. And I want to say it's probably the same line along with what Ashley said of like you're always doing your little thing in your little corner, and then you come to you go to the event and you realize that it's so much bigger, and it's almost like everyone's working for the same goal, and that just it not overwhelmed you, but it kind of like takes you out to another level of, because it's almost like, oh, we got everyone together to pursue one goal.
Yeah, I'll add on quickly to that, but that's where I met Hio too. But going there, our region was really small, the Northwest was, and our first like conference, we only had 60 people in 2014. That was when our Northwest VSA relaunch was. So to go there, at first for me, it was a little overwhelming, but to see everybody with a common goal, you do see kind of like that bridge between like, oh my God, there's a lot more people. It's not only me. I'm not the only one doing VSA. So it kind of coincides with what Ashley was saying. So I do definitely agree with you, because the Boston conference, I was there too. And there was so much, I felt like it was even more overwhelming for me to see that many people. So I do agree with you when it comes to, you're not the only one trying to pursue this goal.
There's almost like a sense of community, because let's say when you live in your region, for example, you're like, oh, there's a Vietnamese community here, but when you have kind of, the whole nation or multi-nation together, you're like, oh, whoa, there's that many people, and then it's almost like an unspoken bond, if you will, because it's like, oh, we're at this foreign land, but there's so much in common. It's like, oh, it feels like a real sense of belonging, even though you don't have that much technically in common with them, because you're so diverse in who you are.
I remember. Oh, Matthew, do you want to talk first?
No, you go.
I have this problem a lot. I remember I went to the mixed surfing in Assetol, and then I bumped into a hospitality. I don't know if he was staff or director, but I bumped into DC, and he was just talking to us, and he was like, "Oh yeah, like this conference is very different from any other leadership conference you'll ever be at." Because for some reason, he's like, I don't really know what it was. Maybe it's just like the cultural background and connection we have, but you'll make friendships that like last for a lifetime. And then along with what everyone else is saying, I just thought it was like so inspirational just to see like how far other VSAs have gone, and like how willing they were to like spread their ideas, and just the whole idea that I was able to like break out of my shell, be myself, and like be around people who I felt like truly did care about me, and like connect with them as a family from like people from different regions. I think that's like just like forming that sense of family within a span of 3 days. Like that's really what like kind of brought me back. Like
Okay, now I'll go. So I'm still really new to UNAVSA, so I can only say like regarding like VSA event. So the first VSA event I went to was our NorCal UVSA Summit, which is our 3-day leadership conference. So for that, what I enjoyed about it was that it really opened my eyes to what VSA has to offer for me on like a higher scale. Because I think if I never went to Summit, I would have never known about like UVSA or what I could do on a higher scale. And I'm always the kind of person who wants to do the most and really step up and make a difference to everyone else. So seeing that I could go higher and potentially help other people out, make people's lives better, made me want to like be much more involved. And also, like you all said, the sense of family, reaching out, meeting new people with not just similar perspectives, but seeing people like with brand new perspectives that you never thought of or you never like heard of before, and having all of those like implemented and like exposed to you, it really changes the way you perceive like everything. So all of that sense of community, family, and just the opportunities to do a lot more. That's what I really enjoyed about my very first event, and that's why I want to potentially or possibly go higher up and do more UNASA things now that I know more about it.
That's awesome. But to go on to the next question now, you all like responded with such inspiring like answers. I didn't expect that question to go on like that, so it's really good. But the next question goes along with what we asked during the questionnaires. But we asked people to give a ranking from 1 being the most and 5 being to the least. What how they prioritize the 5 branches. So just to go over it again, and you could look at there's a visual on the doc as well. But cultural awareness was the top thing that was ranked the highest. And when it came to what was it? Civic engagement. Or you can just see how everything's ranked. I won't go over it because of time constraints, but cultural awareness is number 1. But when we ask this question, but why do you think this is such a high interest compared to the other branches you see, which are personal development, professional development, organizational development, and civic engagement?
Well, I think partly that's probably the reason why all of us joined VSA in the first place, is to connect more with our roots and to learn more about our people. And then, with that, that came the sense of togetherness and all those other things. So it all stems from that one branch.
On the flip side of that, I know personally, I'm afraid of losing my touch with my culture because it's not every single day that I get to speak Vietnamese, whereas in school, every single day, whether it's writing papers or talking to professors, then it's all in English, and the things that we learn, the things that we read, and what we're exposed to more frequently than not is something that's not of our culture. And so this is maybe one of the few sources that we have to be able to talk about it and have others who have similar but also incredibly different experiences share that as well. So this is probably a prime source that we don't get everywhere else.
If anybody else doesn't have anything to say about it, we could move forward from there here. How does that sound? Yeah. So with that, that's the conclusion of our VSA Academy focus group. But before we end, we want to show you some visuals that we have that kind of are a better explanation of what we gathered from the focus group, or not the focus group, but from all the participants that focused in the questionnaire. But just to give an overview, there were 300 participants that participated in our questionnaire. So by hosting this focus group, it really helped us kind of grasp into why the questions were answered in the way they are today. So thank you so much for answering that for us. But with that, here, do you want to share the graphics?
Sure. Should I just screen share?
Yeah, you can screen share.
Okay. Can you guys see me? You guys can hear me, right?
Yeah.
All right. So it's just a summary of like all of our questionnaire, like the people who took it and what do they want. So it was predominantly female, and the region, I believe it was more of the East Coast, and the Northwest was really strong in taking that test because they really wanted that $25 gift card. Most people live in a suburban environment, and most of you, or at least the survey, were around college age. And in terms of UNASA, most of you have never attended UNASA, and the ones that did attend it, it's the most recent one, which is in New Orleans. And for the ones that are involved, they stay involved. So 45% of you are in VSA related stuff for more than 3 years. For information, you guys said that you are really updated with UNASA events. And then this is why did you like UNASA, or what did you enjoy the most about your first conference? And the majority of you guys said meeting new people and kind of creating a family. And then this is the same thing as you just saw at the bottom of this page, but it's just in a sexier graphics, I guess. That most of you like what do you call it? Rank cultural awareness as your number one, and as you can see, civic engagement is less interested in terms of this organization. Most effective learning style. You guys said a lot about frequency, and I forgot the other answer, but frequency. Most people are a visual learner, and I believe it's kinesthetic, is it?
Mhm.
And
You got it.
nice. And then most people take direction best when they are taken through the route at least once. And then for giving or taking directions, most people, they think it's effective when they repeat the answer or someone repeats the answer to them. So that's how they absorb it the best. And then for a role model, most of you said my mother. A lot of parents, but specifically my mother. Apparently, Folk is really popular as well. And then Obama and my sister made a notable contribution. And then again, the last one is what occupation or field that you're studying in. And overwhelmingly, a lot of you said it is the medical field or medical related field. And so we're wondering if that will shift to another what do you call it, paradigm as we can, as we stay longer in the States. And that concludes the surveys.
Yeah, but as I said before, thank you so much for your participation. I know that we went 10 minutes overtime, but that means a lot to us because now we have information to bring back, and hopefully there's all this information. I know it will go into the platform, into seeing what's next for us. But thank you so much, and I will conclude it from there. But I hope you all have a good night, and I'll stop the broadcast right